This is lesson 1, activity 1. So lesson 1, the title of lesson 1 is projecting and scaling. And the title of activity 1 is number talk, remembering fraction division. So we're going to divide these numbers and we're going to use fractions, so dividing up fractions, fraction division. So let's look at 6 1/4 divided by 2 first. And you can rewrite 6 1/4 divided by 2 by multiplying by 1/2. And there's all kinds of little tricks that people try to remember. Just remember the basic mathematics, what you are doing. What you're doing is you're using the inverse operation. So the inverse operation of division is multiplication. And you are using what's called the multiplicative inverse. So the inverse of 2 is 1/2. It's also known as the reciprocal. So again, rather than divide, you're multiplying. So that's the inverse operation. Now, it wouldn't make any sense to multiply by 2 because that's multiplying by the same number. They cannot be equal. So you have to multiply by the inverse, the multiplicative inverse or the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. And you'll remember that from 7th grade. All right, so the next step is you can use the distributive property. So it's 6 plus 1/4. So look at it as 6 plus 1/4. What's 1/2 of 6? What's 1/2 of 1/4? And just go up here for a second, just look at this problem. What's 6 divided by 2? Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3. You guys all know that. And what's 1/4 divided by 2? So if you have 1/4 of something, 1/4 of an apple, and you divide that up into 2 equal parts, one of those parts will be equal to 1/8. So this answer is going to be 3 1/8. I'm just taking you through some of the thinking so you can recall that, and you can use that thinking on more complex numbers that you just can't look at and figure out. And so 6 plus 1/4 times 1/2. Now how do you solve that? You use the distributive property. Again, something from 7th grade. So 6 times 1/2 or 1/2 of 6. And 1/4 times 1/2 or 1/2 of 1/4. And the next couple of problems, I actually write it as 1/2 of 6 and 1/2 of 1/4. I think it actually works a little bit better that way. So I put the 1/2 in front instead of behind. Makes no difference. You can do it both ways. I just like thinking of it the other way. All right, so 1/2 times 6 is 6/2. We know that 6/2 is the same as 3. And 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8. Now let's zoom in just for a second on this 1/2 of 1/4. And so I am flipping this around and talking about it as 1/2 of 1/4. Easier to think about it that way. So here's 1/2. And this is 1/4. So what does that 1/2 of this 1/4 look like? Well, if I take 2 equal parts, 1/2 of this 1/4 is equal to 1/8. If I fill this in, label the rest of the parts, this is 1/2, this is 1 whole piece, this is 1/4, and 1/2 of this 1/4 is 1/8. Now, look at it, you think about it, if I have 4 parts, and I divide each of those 4 parts into 2 pieces, I'm going to end up with 8 equal pieces. So again, if I have 4 parts, I have fourths, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and I divide each of those 4 parts up into two equal pieces, I'm going to end up with 8 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I want just one of them. So I want 1/2 of 1/4 equals 1/8. How much is 2/2 of 1/4? Well, this is 1/2 of 1/4. So this piece here would be 2/2 of 1/4. Well, 2/2 of 1/4 is the same as 2/8 is the same as 1/4. And so it all begins to make sense. 2/2 is the same as 1. 1 times 1/4 is 1/4. 2/8 is 1/4. All this stuff that you learned in earlier grades becomes second nature as you try to do these problems, think about them, try to make some drawings that will help you out. All right, so what's the answer in the end? You have 6 halves plus 1/8. 6 halves is the same as 3 plus 1/8. So this answer is 3 and 1/8. So I go back up here to the top and just look at this problem and see if it makes sense that it's 3, 6 divided by 2, and 1/8, 1/2 of 1/4, or 1/4 divided by 2 pieces, divided into 2 pieces. All right, the next problem. So this is 10 and 1/7 divided by 5. And again, if you look at it, what's 1/5 of 10? So I'm going to use the inverse operation, which is multiplication, and I'm going to use the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal, which is 1/5. So you are operating on this 10 and 1/7. So some people, when they try to memorize rules, they think, oh, you have to take the reciprocal of 10 and 1/7, which is 10/7, reciprocal 7/10, and they get all confused and they switch things up. It's just that you're just figuring out what's 10 and 1/7 divided by 5, and so you're just changing it to, it's the same thing as 1/5 of 10 and 1/7. Okay, so let's use the distributive property. Let's split this up, 10 plus 1/7. So what's 1/5 of 10? Well, that's pretty easy. It's 10 divided by 5, same thing, which equals 2. Now, if I have sevens, and if I have 7 things, 7 sevenths, and I divide each of those into 5 equal parts, so 1/5, I'm going to get 35ths. I'm going to get 35 little pieces. So again, I have 7 things, so they're all sevens, and I divide each of those 7 things into 5 parts. 7 times 5 is 35, so I'm going to get 35ths. So 1/5 of one of those sevens equals 1/35. If you don't understand, try drawing it out. People have trouble with fractions. It's because people have trouble visualizing what's going on. So try to visualize it. Make a drawing of what I just said. Draw 7 rectangles. Divide each of those 7 rectangles up into 5 parts. You'll end up with 35 pieces. So 1/5 of one of those sevens is going to be 1/35. All right, so you end up with 2 and 1/35. Put them together. That's 2 and 1/35, or 2 plus 1/35. Put them together. That's 2 and 1/35. Okay, the last one, oh, actually, let's zoom in once again on the 7 1/7. Each of those 7 pieces gets divided into 5 parts. So 5 times 7 is 35. So you're going to get 35ths. So 1/5 of just one of those pieces. So one of those pieces divided up into 5 parts is going to give you 1/35. All right, the last one, a little bit harder. This is 8 1/2 divided by 11. Why is it a little bit harder? Because 8 divided by 11 doesn't give you a whole number. The other two problems, 10 divided by 5 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3, but 8 divided by 11 doesn't give you a whole number, so it's a little bit harder. But you're still going to use the inverse operation, which is multiplication, and you're going to use the multiplicative inverse of 11, which is 1/11. So again, you are operating on 8 1/2, so that stays the same. That doesn't change, but you're going to divide it by 11 or multiply it by 1/11. Use the distributive property. 1/11 times 8, or 1/11 of 8, is 8/11. So think about taking 8, dividing that up into 11 little pieces, and taking 8 of those pieces. So that is going to be 8/11. And this is back to the same thing that we've been doing. If I have 2 parts, and I divide each of those 2 parts up into 11 pieces, how many small pieces are you going to get? Well, you're going to get 22 small pieces. So you're going to get 20 seconds. So 1/11 of 1/2, that 1/2 gets divided up into 11 pieces. So one of those pieces is 1/22. Now what about this 8/11 going to 16/22? I have a little drawing of that, and I'll show you in a moment. Remember, this is using the distributive property up here. But just think about it for just a second. I have 11 things. I'm going to cut each of those 11 things into 2 parts. I'm going to end up with 22 pieces. If 8 of those 11 things were shaded, how many are going to be shaded after I cut them up into 22, or each up into half, so I end up with 22 pieces? How many will be shaded? Will be 16. You can add that. Why do you want to do that? Because this ends up being 1/22. So you have to add things that are the same. So 16 20-seconds plus 1/22 gives you 17 20-seconds. Is actually the answer to this problem. These get tough, and people just have to take the time to think through it. And you do that, and you try a couple different problems. It will become understandable. It will start to make sense to you. Let's make a little drawing of, actually, first of all, let's look at 1/2 of 11. Or, I'm sorry, 1/11 of 1/2. It's actually the same thing. So take each half and divide that up into 11 small pieces. You end up with 20 seconds. So 1/11 of one of those halves, so just one part of one of those halves, is one of those 20 seconds. This is equal to 1/22. Let's take a look at going from 8/11 to 16 20-seconds. So draw 11 things, and this is what I mean. You got to do the work. You got to make some drawings, try to visualize it. So draw 11 ovals, shade in 8 of them. So that's 8/11. And so now you come along and you divide each of these 11 pieces into 2 parts. Well, how many pieces are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with 22 pieces. 2 times 11 is 22. Well, how many of them are still shaded in? Well, instead of 8 pieces, each of those 8 pieces got divided up into 2 equal parts. So now 16 are shaded in. So you doubled the number of pieces from 11 to 22, and you doubled the number of parts that were shaded from 8 to 16. So this ends up being 16 20-seconds. You add 1/22 to it, and what do you get? You get 17 20-seconds. I just want to go back and insert this little piece, this little part into the video. So we got to this point, and so we had 8/11. 8 of them are shaded in. And if you divide each of those 11 things into 2 equal parts, now I have 20 seconds. I have 22 pieces. 8 of them were shaded. How many are shaded in now? And this is the part I skipped. 16 of these are shaded in now. So it was 8, but each one of them now is divided into 2 parts. So 2 times 8 is 16. So now 16 20-seconds are shaded in. A little review on fraction division.